Did you hear that NASA, that organization many of us may have heard of for sending rockets into space, they've appointed a woman as their head of science for the first time ever. So when I read a little bit more about her and I came across this news story, what I think is really true about her is that a lot of kids dream of becoming an astronaut or a space scientist. I think she is someone who simply never grew out of it. So without much ado, let's jump into this fascinating news story. And for those of you who are hearing this podcast channel for the first time, hi, this is Sangeeta, the host of What's New Today, this kids and family podcast about current events shaping our world. In every episode, I'm joined by a curious child who could be from anywhere to discuss that news story. So in today's episode, I'm joined by...
Hi, my name is Adya and I'm from India. I'm 11 years old from 6th grade.
Welcome once again, Adya. Tell us about why you're so interested in this news story about a woman who's become the head of science at NASA for the first time.
Well, first of all, I'm a girl, so I kind of like it when something about women is like super, because women have had gender discrimination against them a lot of times. So the fact that a woman has made it to the top is really nice for me. Also, I seriously like physics and chemistry and even biology.
Nice. So you're one of those that likes counting the bones in our bodies and maybe trying to mix bleach and vinegar in your kitchen and see if that causes a minor explosion. So on to a story about a scientist who, like Adya, also may have loved science as a child. So the first woman science chief appointed by NASA, Dr.Nicola Fox. So I read somewhere that her dad made her watch the landing on the moon for the first time by a human when she was 9 months old.
Wait, she remembers that?
I don't think she remembers watching something when she was 9 months old. I think it's more like one of her parents must have reminded her about it or narrated that story to her later.
Now that sounds like the exact embarrassing story that a parent would tell their children. Like, there was this 16 or so year old teenage girl who was like chatting with her friends about hanging out, and then her dad came in and told her friends that she'd won the cutest baby competition when she was 6 months old.
Oh my god, I can only imagine the face of that girl. Alright, but I think this father talking about a child looking at the moon landing on TV when she was 9 months old is still a more respectable story. Do you think so?
True. But I don't know how Nicola Fox felt about it, so...
Yep, fair enough. But in reality, I believe the story goes something like this. When she was 9 months old and Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon, this event happened during the night in England. So she is from England, Nicola Fox. So she was fast asleep in her crib and she apparently stirred a little bit. And so immediately her father picked her up and propped her in front of the TV so that she could watch this momentous occasion.
Okay, now that sounds like most fathers waking you up when you'd rather be asleep and making you do stuff you don't want to.
I think we've had a lot of very interesting stories so far from Dr. Nicola Fox's early life. Did you find anything very interesting when you were researching about how she became a physicist?
There was the fact that she became a physicist through the process of elimination. She liked science, but for biology, she practically fainted at the sight of blood, like literally fainted. So it got so bad that whenever something was getting dissected in the biology class, the teacher would tell her to skip the biology class on that day. And then she liked chemistry, but she had this friend who would the friend would spill all the hazardous acids, even the ones that are corrosive, and she would leave fridges with hazardous gases wide open and spill everything into an extremely dangerous mess and all of that thing. And then she announced that she was going to study and become a chemist. So Nicola thought, well, this may not exactly be such a good idea to become a chemist when your friend is spilling everything, and you might have a few more accidents. And thus she chose to become a physicist.
Wow, that is a very different inspiration story. So, what kind of science programs will she be leading at NASA?
She'll be leading programs where robots are sent hunting for life on Mars and exploring different distant galaxies with the JWST, with the James Webb Space Telescope, and most importantly, the solar probe.
Oh, so that's why she calls herself on Twitter as the Solar Girl 2018.
Wait, do you have super hacking abilities? How do you know that she calls herself Solar Girl whatnot?
You don't have to hack anybody's account, Adya. The Twitter handles of people is something that anybody can see publicly.
But if you are going to go out on Twitter, how will people know exactly who you are if you give yourself a completely different name or whatever?
Usually they'll introduce themselves. They would have written a line of introduction under that I am Dr. Nicola Fox working at NASA. I'm a project scientist. That's how you find out who that person is. If somebody wants to be completely anonymous and they don't leave any description, then there's no way for us to find out.
Oh, so she could have remained anonymous. Is that right?
Yeah, of course she could. On the point of the programs that she's going to lead, so I've heard a little bit about robots which are hunting for life on Mars, and as far as I know, nothing has been found. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, if you were aliens and you had some weird things suddenly poking about in your home planet, wouldn't you hide yourself?
Very logically correct. And I've also heard a little bit about the James Webb Space Telescope. But the solar probe, that is something relatively new to me. A solar probe, I'm assuming, is a rocket that you will send to the sun.
Yes, it is a rocket you send to the sun.
How can a rocket survive in the sun? Isn't that a little too hot?
Well, apparently, yes. I mean, they found materials that can withstand millions of degrees of Celsius that the sun's corona has. Well, somebody interviewed Nicola Fox, so she said it took them over 60 years for them to build this rocket, a new technology, and of course to find or develop the materials.
Must be a raging inferno inside the sun, right? It's definitely not a place you'd like to go and roast marshmallows. So, why was this solar probe sent to the sun? I mean, what did the scientists have in mind?
There are these two super cool trivia I found. The sun's surface is 6,000 degrees Celsius. But the sun's corona, the outermost temperature of the sun, is more than 2 million degrees Fahrenheit.
Really? That's like saying when I move away from a campfire, it gets hotter. Sort of the opposite of what we would think.
Whoa! So the second trivia is, there are some giant bursts of material that fly away from the sun, and these are called solar winds. We don't really know what causes them, so
Dr. Nicola Fox and her team have sent a solar probe to find answers to these two trivia. Is it generally because scientists are a curious lot that they've sent this solar probe and they want to find out more about it, or is there any other problem they're trying to solve?
First of all, if they weren't curious, they wouldn't have become scientists. So I'm sure they want to find out more and fill a few more editions of encyclopedias But also, I think the solar wind may be something that can hurt us. Sometimes solar winds can cause electricity blackouts or make a satellite stop functioning for a while. So, if we could find out more about the solar winds, maybe we could do something to protect our electricity grid and satellites.
Wonderful! Is there any interesting trivia that you'd like to end this episode with?
I kinda like this quote that Nicola Fox made. The key to being a scientist is to love asking questions. If you're fascinated about how and why things work, you're already a scientist.
Wonderful! With that, let's move to the next interesting part of this episode.
Quiz time! Let's see how well you listened today.
Question 1. In which country was Dr. Nicola Fox born?
Nicola Fox was born in England.
Question 2. What was the momentous occasion related to space that Nicola Fox witnessed as a 9-month-old baby?
It was Neil Armstrong landing on the moon.
And the last and the final question. What is hotter, the sun's surface or the atmosphere enveloping the sun?
The atmosphere enveloping the sun.
Thank you so much, Adya. I had a wonderful time chatting with you. Did you enjoy today's podcast?
Of course I did.
Alright, so before we wrap up this episode, can you name any one episode that you've really enjoyed in the recent past on the What's New Today podcast channel?
I liked episode 91. It's about the story of the flashing green comet that's come back to visit us. Probably like it partly because I saw the smoke trail of that comet one night.
You did go out and did you try to see the comet in February earlier?
I did go out to my terrace. And then I saw it and then I yelled for the whole family, but when they came, the smoke trail had vanished.
Before we wrap up, for those of our listeners who love riddles, here's one for you. I travel through space. I have a tail, but not a dog's face. I'm made of ice, dust and gas, and astronomers love to watch me as I pass. Who am I? If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, just scroll right down to your show notes and there's a place directly there where you can click reply and leave your answer to the riddle. If you're listening to it on any other platform, please do send us your answers on hello@wsnt.in. And all those children who send us answers to riddles, they usually stand an excellent chance to come back on this show and chat with us about an interesting news story just like Adya did. That brings us to the end of this episode. If you loved listening to this banter between Adya and I, this podcast channel, What's New Today, might just be a wonderful way for you to catch up on interesting news stories from around the world. So please do click follow and subscribe and do leave us a rating and a review. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast or Google Podcasts, you may need to first click the follow and the subscribe, and thereafter you'll get an option where you can click and leave us a 5-star rating. New episodes drop every Monday and Friday, and
Thanks for listening.